Hello, this SOLIDWORKS demo will cover lofts. A loft is basically a blend between two faces or shapes. So in this case, I'm selecting both of these sketches. And you can see that the blend is happening in between them. Some things for lofts, it's generally a good idea if the shapes that are being blended together have the same number of corners or generally a similar profile. There's greater success there. That said, of course, it is possible to loft a square to a circle. That's something that lofts are good at doing, but it's just kind of best practice whenever possible to have them be similar. As far as the loft property dialog and the feature here, you can see that there's this sort of like rough guide that I can drag to modify which corners go to what, and kind of push the boundaries of the loft. There's also start and end constraints. So once you have your profile selected, you can tell them how to start and stop. So in this case, if I select normal to profile, it basically gives it like a bit of a tangent start. You can see it starts the loft perpendicular to the face. So these are some other settings. But it's also helpful to have some guide curves, which I can show later. It can be a sketch that will connect two corners of the loft to try and guide it. So again, it's good for blends. If you're having trouble getting your loft to succeed, sometimes giving more space for the blend to happen will work. Similar to sweeps, if you're having your loft like turn a corner. So if the loft is going from one face to a perpendicular face or an angled face, having a bigger gap there can allow more room for that transition to happen. So here's an example of a loft from a circle to an oval. And here you can see the default loaded with this kind of guide going to opposite edges. So I actually need to start by dragging this so it aligns. Now, while this loft looks successful, it's not ideal because it's not going to be symmetrical. There's a lot of sort of organic things happening here that we don't have any control over. And so an easy way to fix that and the best way to address that is actually to loft in halves and quarters. And what that does for us, so if we loft from this quarter circle to this quarter oval, it now gives us corners for which to drive our loft and guide it, and give us a little bit more success that way. Even better, with this loft would be to add in some guide curves here. So let's see, I need to recreate this loft. I'm going to delete it. And now with these sketches and guides in place, I can create another loft from the same two profiles. And in the guide curves here, I can actually select some of these pre-created sketches. This way, the curvature can be dialed in exactly to our desired amount. So here we have our three sketches here guiding this loft very specifically. Now in this case, the loft is going from this bottom shape to the top shape. If for some reason your loft fails in one direction, try to consider if it can be completed in a different direction. So could we, for example, create a sketch that looks like this blue face and loft it to this here, following these edges. So instead of top to bottom going left to right. The knob demo that we're about to get into will explain this and illustrate this for us in more detail. It's also just worth mentioning that lofts can also go from faces. It doesn't have to be sketches. And of course, all these start and end constraints are all available as well here. So we can kind of flip these directions as we see fit, or depending on what your selections are, sometimes you get more options to select from. So yeah, it's a good tool for blending different shapes together. All right, we're going to use the loft technique now to build a knob for an appliance. So I'm going to create a new file new, select the part template, and click OK. We want to start by creating our master sketch. So a new sketch on the top plane, Alt-S, Alt-N. So we're looking normal to it. I'm going to start by creating a circle. So O for circle, click on the center of the origin. I'm now going to create an ellipse. So you want to locate the ellipse command in the sketch tab in your command manager. For me, it's next to the letter A for the sketched text, and just click on ellipse. And again, I'm going to click on the center, and the ellipse requires 3 clicks. The starting point is the center, then you set the height and the width. So now I'm going to dimension this to match our intended demo here. So the circle will be set to 1.2 inches in diameter. The height of our ellipse, which we should have 2 endpoints to select, will be 0.8 inches tall, and the width will be, if we select the 2 points side to side, will be 0.4 inches wide. And this will give us our starting master sketch. It is worth mentioning you could draw a vertical line in your ellipse to make sure, and set it to be for construction, to make sure that it's not like twisted slightly. So once we have our master sketch, we can exit that. We're now going to create 2 extrudes that will be the base of the knob. So I'm going to create a new top plane sketch. So I'm going to select the top plane, Alt-S, select on the large circle, and hit C for convert entities, or click on convert entities in the sketch tab. Now, while you're still in there, I actually accidentally exited the sketch. You can select the sketch from the tree or stay in the sketch and click on extruded boss base. And what we want to do is set a blind extrude of 0.1 of this circle, moving extruded upwards in our file. The next thing we want to do is copy the ellipse. So I'm going to create a new top plane, Alt-S, click on the ellipse from the master, and click on C or convert entities. And then while we're still in the sketch, I'm going to click on extruded boss base. And this one we want to set to 1 inch tall. We want to make sure that merge result is not checked. And then we can click the green check in our boss extrude command. And now we kind of have a starting point for our knob here. Now the next thing we want to do is work in halves and quarters. So we actually could have done this in the sketch. We can also do this with a command. So with the command, you can use in the surfaces tab in your command manager, you can locate cut with surface. For me, it's about centered. And we want to first cut with the right plane. So the cut tool, I'm going to select the right plane. Doesn't really matter which way the arrow is pointing. I'm going to flip it so it's pointing right for me and check that box. And then I'm going to repeat that command with the front plane. For me, my arrow is pointing away from me, so I'm left with the sort of bottom left corner of the knob. And you should now, have a quarter of the knob left of what we just created. So now we're going to sketch our guide curves. So I'm going to select the right plane, Alt-S, Alt-N, so I'm normal to it. I guess I'll twist it a bit so that you can see what I'm looking at. I'm going to start by creating an arc, so A for arc, and selecting the 2 top left corners of the bodies, or locate the top edges of the bodies and just basically set your arc to be coincident to those endpoints. And here we have the arc. I'm now going to close the sketch by hitting L for line and drawing a horizontal line along the bottom of the arc, a vertical line up to this top edge, and then completing the shape with a horizontal line back to the arc. I'll now take another line coming off of the top of the arc, and basically I want to set both of this newly created line and the arc to be tangent to each other. And now if I use D for dimension, I can dimension this line to be a angled degree from the top of our shape, and this will sort of control the curvature of the arc. And we want to just make sure that that sort of angle control is set to be for construction so it doesn't interfere with our shape. You could set the top edge of the shape to be 0.1 inches long. This is somewhat arbitrary. It just has to kind of have enough distance into the quarter extruded oval for the loft that we will be completing later. Now we want to repeat this on the front plane, or if you started on the front plane, on the right plane, either way. So I'm going to select the front plane, create a new sketch, create an arc again from the top outside edge corners of the bodies we created, close the shape with horizontal lines coming off the endpoints of the arc, and then connecting those two with a vertical line. In the same way, I want to create a construction line that's tangent to the top endpoint of the arc and set that to be 80 degrees and for construction. So sorry, for construction, and then 80 degrees to the top edge of our shape. Again, somewhat arbitrary, but just kind of sets this curvature. It gives us full control. And again, the amount of overlap of the shape into the taller body, you can set that to be 0.1 inches, but it doesn't really matter. It's just as long as there's some overlap in there, that's all that matters. And then I'm going to exit that sketch. This would be a good time to save your file, so I'm going to hit File, Save As. Go ahead and name it whatever you like. All right, now we're ready to get into the loft command. What we're going to do is locate in the feature tab of our command manager the lofted boss base command and click on that. So it's asking us for a couple things. The highlighted blue box is the profiles. So in this case, we're going to start by lofting the quarter circle to the quarter oval, the top faces of the two bodies. You can see here that this kind of like rough loft guide is a little bit off. It helps to kind of align the right corners to the right corners. But for our guide curves, we actually want to use the sketches we just made. So if you can't see your sketches, Alt plus V for view will show your sketches. Now it's a bit confusing because of the way we set the sketches up. You cannot just simply click on them because it selects the whole shape. Really what we want is just the arc. So in order to do that, we need the selection manager. So right click anywhere in your viewing window and look for selection manager. It should be third from the top of the pop-up menu. The default icon of 3 cursors depressed is what you want. And simply just select one of the arcs. So it's highlighted in purple and just click the check. You want to just do that again. So right click, selection manager, other arc, and click the check. And now for the final guide, you may notice that if you just have the curves, your loft will actually bow inwards a little bit. So you want to select that center edge of the long, tall shape in your file. And so you have 3 guide curves, and you can check that box for the loft. Now, if we want to mirror this, we can locate the mirror command in our feature tab of our command manager. Again, to view the planes to mirror, you can expand your tree by clicking the small black arrow to the right of the property manager. So here, the features to mirror, it defaulted to the loft. That's fine, that's not ideal. I'm going to select that loft and delete that. I'm actually going to select bodies to mirror. It's just a little bit more robust. Under mirror face plane, I'm going to click back in that box and I'm going to select the right plane and check that box, or hit the green check. And then I'm going to repeat this command again. For mirror face plane, I'm going to select the front plane. And then again, it defaulted to the most recent feature. I deleted that. I'm going to select the body. It's just a bit more robust, and click that checkbox. So now we have what looks like a knob for an appliance. We want to look at it a little bit more carefully though. So I'm actually going to locate the display style in the top center and turn the lines off. And I'm going to hit Alt-V to hide the sketches so we can just look cleanly at this knob. And what you'll notice, hopefully, is that there is a seam here on your file, on this file, by using this method. Seams in SOLIDWORKS are not ideal. If this were to be molded, it would have kind of like a crease here. Maybe it's a design element, but often things like this are unintentional and not desired. The reason for this is because of the guide curve, we don't have a tangency set to it. So this is where it's important to be aware of other options we have. So in this case, instead of going top to bottom, we want to go back and edit our loft and go left to right. So I'm going to right click on the loft command here and locate edit feature. It's the top leftmost icon. and I'm just simply going to clear selections. So I'm going to right click under profiles and say clear selections. I'm going to right click under guide curves and say clear selections. And so now we sort of have a blank slate with which to start. I'm going to hit Alt V to show our options again. So for the profiles, this time I'm actually going to select the sketches. And so now our loft is going left to right, whereas before it was going top to bottom. Now, this is a bit of a bug I'm realizing. I can't see, I'm trying to see the solid bodies, but for me, I'm not seeing them. I can kind of hover, when it comes to guide curves, I can kind of hover and select these edges. You want to make sure you don't accidentally select your master sketch here. So maybe a better way, I'm going to actually X out of this, and I'm simply just going to delete my loft. The loft one command, I just selected it and deleted it. Unfortunately, it means we're going to have to repeat the mirror commands. So now I'm going to load a new loft command and start again. And hopefully now the bodies are visible. I don't know what's causing that bug. So again, for profiles, I'm going to select both of these sketches with the arcs in them. It doesn't hurt to kind of set your rough loft guide to at least be clean to start with. And then when in guide curves, I'm going to hit Alt V to hide the sketches, and I'm just simply going to select the edges of the bodies here. Now, to avoid that seam like we had before, under start and end constraints, we want to set the loft to be normal to profile. So this kind of sets a start and end tangency so that when this is mirrored, that seam should be gone. So this is what's key in creating this. You want to make sure also that merge result is checked, and you can go ahead and click that green box. And now you have a knob that when mirrored should not have a seam. So because I deleted that loft, we have to repeat our mirror commands. A quicker way to mirror, you could start by selecting the right plane and click on mirror, and that will automatically load the right plane here. And then you can simply just click on the body in your viewing window and check that box. Then I can select the front plane from my tree, click the mirror command, and repeat the process. And it's just a little bit quicker. And now without lines on, you can see the seam is gone. So just be aware of seams that are caused by lofts, and be aware that sometimes going left to right is better than top down. And that is the main takeaway from this demo, aside from learning lofts. Okay, the final part of this demo is just adding some details to this knob to make it look a little bit more finished. So firstly, we're going to add a stem. I'm realizing now that I accidentally extruded my first extrude the wrong direction, but that's okay. I'm going to create the stem sketch on the bottom face of this knob here. So I'm going to select the face and hit Alt-S, and then again Alt-N to make it normal to view. O for circle. I'm going to click on the origin and drag a circle. We want this to be roughly 0.2 inches in diameter. This will just give sort of a mating point for the assembly. And I'm going to, while I'm still in Sketch, go to Features and click on Extruded Boss Base. And I'm just going to extrude this roughly 1/4 inch so that it has a bit of a stem to the knob. The next thing we're going to add is an indicator. So I'm going to select the top face of the knob and Alt-S, Alt-N to create a sketch on there. Here you can start to match your aesthetic, whether it's a circle as the indicator, or maybe it's, for me, it'd probably be a bit of a rectangle or something. Whatever it is, it's probably a good idea to have it centered on the origin. So I'm going to use, to center mine, I'm going to use a guide construction line. Whatever shape it is you end up drawing, while you're still in Sketch, you can do an extruded cut down and into the knob, anywhere from 0.02 to 0.05 inches, just to give it a bit of depth there. The next thing we're going to add is a cap. So the knob is already capped, but we can split it to give it a part line. When you render this, you can then give it a different material, so it could have like a chrome top, for example. So I'm going to select the, let's see here, I'm going to select a front plane and create a new sketch, and basically just a horizontal line that goes wider than the knob body. And I'm going to set this to be about 1/4 inch below the topmost edge. Again, these dimensions are somewhat arbitrary. It can be to your choice. Under features, I'm going to make an extruded cut. set it to be through all both, and check that thin feature, set it to 0.001. Again, it's just sort of a part line. When the pop-up appears, just keep all bodies. Click OK. So now we have that split. And finally, the last detail we're going to add is a bezel. So on the front plane, I'm going to sketch a feature just outside of the knob here. Again, this shape is somewhat arbitrary. You can sort of match whatever aesthetic you're going for. It is important to sketch a vertical line on the origin. And what you can do now is under Features, load the Revolve Boss Base command. And make sure merge result is not checked, and check that box. If you have a bit of a gap, it'll look more real. But now this might look, sort of like an embellishment on the knob. It's kind of a ring to kind of surround it, and so when you mount it to the appliance, it'll have a slightly more realistic and finished look. The last thing to do would be to go in and add fillets. Again, if I'm matching my aesthetic, the fillets might be on the smaller side. You want to add your part line fillet between the cap. So again, 0.02, 0.01 will be somewhat realistic. I guess I went to 0.01 because I already had a smaller fillet on top, and I just wanted that part line fillet to look a bit smaller. So there you have it. A lofted knob for the appliance. Other things you can change. Actually, now would be a good time to save your file. If you want to add some more design details and elements, it is possible to change the extruded shape. This may cause a lot of rebuild errors, but I can try and work through them. So I'm editing my sketch here for this top shape, and I'm simply just going to turn it into a rectangle. Now I do want the dimensions to stay about the same, so I'm going to kind of set all of these midpoints. And actually I want fillets on the edges, so that, again, it's a good idea that you're lofting from similar shapes. So if I was introducing a corner here where the circle had no corners, it'd be a bit confusing. That pop-up, that's giving me an error. It's basically telling me that by adding a fillet here, it's affecting this centered rule. But you can just click OK through that. All right, so I've edited my sketch. We're now going to deal with all these errors that appear. So the way I do that is I take the blue bar at the bottom of the tree and just drag it up to where the first error appears. So of course the first error is the loft. It's mainly with these sketches, or these sketches also have exclamation marks, so I'm going to edit them one sketch at a time. It's kind of lost this corner here, so I'm going to select that endpoint. You can also see in the relationship it's highlighted as this like dark green. I'm going to delete that and simply just re-drag it until it matches, and that should fix that sketch. And I assume I have to do the same with this other one. So again, right-click the sketch, edit, locate the miscolored entity, delete it from the relationship, and again, I can sort of drag it to the corner, and now it's kind of reattached itself. Again, it's because it's like because the profile changed, it lost that corner. So now I'm going to edit the loft. So here again, it's lost the edge. We introduced a new edge here, so I'm going to find the highlighted object that's giving the error and delete it. And here I want to use the command manager again because I'm selecting multiple edges. So I'm going to right-click and load the selection manager. I believe I said command manager, I misspoke. It's the selection manager I want. Right-click anywhere in your viewing window and find selection manager in the menu. And then simply just select these continuous edges. In this case, we want them to be purple. And make sure that they're all touching each other. Check that green box when you're done. And hopefully this loft should work. It's a little bit tighter and more complex, but click this green check. It appears to be working. Sometimes repairing one thing will repair others. So one thing that changed here is the center did not get merged. So I'm going to edit the loft again and make sure that merge result is checked. I'm realizing here it is checked, but the feature scope did not include the center body, so you can change feature scope to just be all bodies. and that should fix our problem. And now here we have a knob with a slightly different aesthetic, a slightly different blend to closer match the aesthetic that I'm going for. Dragging the blue bar all the way to the bottom, we can see if things rebuild, just a couple fillets lost, but there you have it. That's one way to kind of modify you know, your design aesthetic to better match you know, the style you're going for. And of course, once you have it set to where you want it, you can hit save, and you now have a knob for an appliance. Thank you.